a lot of different aspects in the bartending industry and so forth and so forth. And I really enjoy doing these classes because I think it's the most fun for me to kind of just talk to people and like hear what they have to say. And I always get just a kick out of this. One thing that's different this time, I have a second camera angle. So it's right here. It's muted, so you have to find it, but every once in a while I want to do certain things. If you want to see a better view, if you toggle to that view, you can see exactly, because it'll show exactly in front of me, and you can see very clearly if I'm cutting something. So I think that's just a little bit more helpful. Depending on what you use, if you use a phone, it might be a little bit tricky to find that right window where it is. Definitely easier on a laptop, but the option is there. So if you want to use it, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll try to be as clearly here, but also over here. Okay, I think that sums it up for about me and how we're gonna do this. So to talk about margaritas, let's start with the margarita and we'll talk about tequila because we cannot talk about margaritas without talking about tequila. I know you thought we're gonna start shaking right away. No, we're not. So you have to listen to me for a while. So margarita means daisy in Spanish. And daisy is actually a very old style of cocktails. So you might have heard of the sour, like a whiskey sour perhaps, and a sour is a 3-ingredient drink consisting of alcohol, lime or lemon juice, and simple syrup. And you just mix those 3 together, and that's your cocktail, and that's the sour. So daisy is basically a sour, but instead of sugar, you would use some kind of a liqueur. So you could use raspberry, pomegranate, passion fruit, orange liqueur, aka triple sec, which is used in a margarita. So the name margarita actually comes from that very old family of cocktails called daisies. And because the direct translation is margarita, that's the name of it. The one thing that really makes margarita stand out though, which is something you don't see very often, especially in classical cocktails, is the salt rim, which is an ingenious invention. You know, because if you're down, especially if you are somewhere down in Mexico and you're going to be hot and you're sweating, you actually really need that salinity because you're going to lose a lot of that while you're sweating down there. So it's a very smart thing to add a little bit of salt so your body can retain it. And it also really changes the way you perceive the cocktail because salt, the same as sugar, is a flavor enhancer. I mean, there's a reason why we add salt to our cooking because it's delicious. It makes everything taste better. In reason, of course, but that's basically what a margarita is. It's a variation of an old cocktail called daisy. Now, what we put into our margaritas is what makes a big difference. So really, like I said, a margarita is a very simple affair. It's 3 ingredients, good quality, plus the salt on the rim. Now, there's a lot of variations. It's probably one of the most abused cocktails, in my personal opinion, ever, because people do all kinds of weird things to it. Like even if you go to a Mexican restaurant, they come out in like half-gallon goblets and they top them up with Sprites and stuff. And I'm like, I'm not mad about it. If you want to drink it, go ahead. But it's not really a true margarita. The fact that you call it a margarita and there's tequila in there does not make it a margarita. Margarita is a simple drink with 3 ingredients. And of course, we can play on that. But what we're going to do today is going to be very simple, refreshing, tart, and just a little bit of saltiness. So the key ingredient in a margarita is, of course, tequila. So what you have there today is one of my favorite bang for buck tequilas is Pueblo Viejo, coming from a renowned distillery. Doesn't break the bank and just works really, really well in cocktails. Of course, you can buy whatever tequila you want. It will work. It's just going to taste a little bit differently. A couple of key things we want to know about tequila. You always want to use 100% agave tequila, and it will always say that on the label. You can see it right here, 100% agave. So tequila is actually one of the most controlled, really supervised alcohols that is created in the world. So the Mexican government has very, very strict rules of how to make it, what can go in it, and so forth and so forth. So it is very, very regulated. It can only come from 6 different states in Mexico to be called tequila. If it comes from anywhere else, it's going to have a different name to it. And it can be only made from one particular agave type. It is the agave tequiliana, also known as the blue agave or a blue Weber agave. So that kind of gives you an idea of it's the same way if you look at how you make bourbon. Well, it's mainly corn it's what it's made out of. So tequila can be only made in very certain areas of Mexico, and it has to be, they have to use a very particular agave plant for it. And we'll elaborate on this a little bit more once we get to mezcal, because that's where it gets a little more complicated, but that's what it is. So when you look for tequila, there's a couple of different things. When I look for sipping tequila, you definitely want to spend a little more money than on a Pueblo Viejo. But usually if you're mixing, like a mid-shelf grade tequila will usually do quite well for that, because the flavors will be muddled in a margarita a little bit as well. But for sipping tequila, I have very much of a different standard. And if you have questions about that, I'll be happy to elaborate on that later, but we'll leave it at that for now. Next up, we have orange liqueur or triple sec. What I'm using right now is Bols. Ideally, my favorite would be Cointreau, but a bottle of Cointreau will oftentimes cost you more than tequila does, so you might not always have some in the hand, and actually we don't have any at the bar at the moment. So Bols will always do, like, it's a very, very solid workhorse for triple sec. And triple sec is really, it means there's a certain amount of sugar in it, but it's always orange liqueur. The last ingredient is gonna be lime juice, which I have right here. I have it here in the fridge. So with lime juice, fresh is always best. You can't beat it. There's a big difference. Even if you squeeze the lime juice 2 days beforehand and do it the day off, you can tell there's a big difference. Another thing that will happen, because the enzymes start working in the lime juice, so it will over time start getting a little bit more acidic, less sweet, a bit more bitter. So the fresh juice will always taste quite a bit sweeter. So that will definitely always affect your cocktail as well. So if you're dealing with a little bit of an old, so this was squeezed yesterday, so it's already gonna have a little bit of that oxidation in there. So we probably wanna go a little bit lighter on that today. But that, once again, that depends on your palate and how you like it. And then last but not least, we have salt, and you can use whatever you want. For the rim in the glass, I have it on a plate here. That's the easiest way to do it. And that will be the first step once we start making a margarita. You can see it on both views here. And that's pretty much it. So you have these three ingredients, and that's how you make a margarita. All right, I'm gonna take questions about tequila and ingredients. Any questions, any at all?
We have these little containers that are in the kit.
Yep.
And I have two of them that have a T on the top. Is that a single shot of tequila or a double shot or what?
Great question. Thank you, because I should have covered that a little bit better. So yeah, all the tequilas and the mezcal, so the tequila are the T's, and mezcal is the M, O is the orange liqueur, and L is the limes. And then in the smaller containers, you also have a G, which is ginger infused agave, and RW, which is red wine. That obviously looks like red wine. So in the big containers, that is 1.5 ounces, just about to 1.7. And that's one shot or for one drink. In the orange container, for example, and the lime, you'll have to start measuring that if you have anything to measure. If not, you can just eyeball it. And I'll talk about the ratios once we get closer, but you can think of it like all the bigger containers are gonna be just around 1.5 to 1.75 ounces. So if you wanna use half an ounce, you just wanna do a splash out of that into your drink. But for the main three cocktails, we have one tequila cocktail, then we'll do a mezcal and one tequila. You can just dump all that in there. The rest of the ingredients, like the orange liqueur and agave, you wanna measure those a little bit more.
We have two containers with L on the top. One is a larger one, and the next one is a smaller one. But they both have L. It's lime juice.
Make sure you have enough lime, so I put one little extra one in there too.
Okay, thank you.
One lime and one small lime. Good questions, thank you.
What type of tequila do you prefer? What brand?
Very good question. Like I said, for this, I use Pueblo Viejo. That's sort of like house tequila that we use a lot. But let me pull down a couple of bottles to show you. One tequila that I don't have here, but I also like for just mixing is Espolon. It's Espolon. But if you want to talk about good sipping tequilas, it will be these three right here, will be my top picks. We have Fortaleza, G4, and Tequila Ocho. And these are all, no, this just gets really deep into the geeky side of tequila, but these are all done by really renowned distilleries, really renowned distillers, and they're very true to the craft of it. They really are craft distillers, and compared to these guys, like they make a ton of tequila. These folks make very little tequila comparatively to all the bigger players. So these are great sipping tequilas. Like I said, any one of these is a good one. So you can they do everything from Blanco, Reposado to Añejo. And if you are aware, a Blanco means that it's basically unaged, of very little time. So it's clear. Reposado means rested, and it's up to 1 year in oak barrels. So it usually has a bit of a hue to it. And you can have a little bit more of that flavor of the barrels, like a little bit more of that vanilla and wood notes. And Añejo means age. So that's up to 3 years in oak barrels, and will have the most effect from the barrel. So you get more that woodiness and that vanilla note and everything else that comes with the wood. And those are the tequilas that kind of transfer over to almost a whiskey land, because you can really make old fashions with them even, So they drink quite differently.
Thank you.
My pleasure. All right, any more questions about ingredients?
When you say sipping, do you have it straight up or do you put it on ice?
Depends how I feel.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
It's however, I always say that whatever you drink drink it however you feel like. If it's a really hot weather, maybe, even if I want tequila, it might be a little much just to have like straight up booze and like sunshine. So
yeah.
I want to put it over a big rock. It might be quite a bit better. Mm-hmm.
We have a whole lime in our kit. Is that for later, or is that?
We're going to jump right into that.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're going to play along, this is where we're going to start playing along in just like 2 seconds. As soon as we're ready to start mixing things up, that's when it's going to happen. All right. Well, let's just jump right into the first step of the tequila. Margarita making, which is we have to rim the glass with salt. So the first thing you want to do, you can always have it ready. So if you want to toggle to that different camera view, now will be the time to do it. If not, you can see it from right here as well. But we're going to take a line, and I just usually cut the ends off just to give it a little bit more stability. But it's easier because I can just stand it like this. And it's always, whenever you work with knives, you want to have stability in things. The less they move, the safer it is. And I'm just going to go from north to south, the pole to pole. When I cut it in half, and then I'm going to do just 4 wedges. And you don't really need the 4, but I'm going to make 4. I'm going to pick one of these. And I'm going to do a little slit here. Depending on how sharp your knife is, you want to be really careful about this. Let's do 1 slit in the middle. And I will take this and put it on the edge of the glass and kind of like clamp it like this. And I give it a little bit of a squeeze, making sure it gets all around, and then I twist the glass so it covers all of it with lime juice. In fast-paced restaurants, we have many different ways of doing it. Like oftentimes we'll have like a little spongy thingy, and we'll just dump it in there instead of doing this every time. It's gonna go and then rim it. So next step is we want to rim the glass. So you can use salt or sugar. Like I said, for a classic margarita, you always want to use salt, but some people like it sweeter, and I'm not here to judge. You can even mix salt and sugar. That's super fun. You can add some cumin in here. You can have some spiciness. You can really play around with it because it's really can change the whole way you perceive the cocktail. My recommended way of doing this is having a little stripe or like a little pile in the middle of a plate. And then you're just going to take only the outside of the glass and just kind of tap it while you turn it. So like such. You see in some bars and places, they will have a big pile of salt and they will literally just like dunk it in there. And there's something a little bit wrong with it, just in a sense that you're gonna have all the salt on the inside of the glass, on the outside, and it's gonna fall in the drink as well. And that can just really, that's like an overabundance of salt, which is you don't really need it. I don't really want it to go in the drink because I want that little accent when I take the sip and you have those little crystals. That's like, finishing a steak off with the salt instead of like putting it there all the time or putting it in a brine, right? It's way different. Okay, so now we have a little salt rim here, and there's a phone in the background. I thought I turned it off. Shows what I know. Okay, so here's our rimmed glass. So I'm gonna put this in the side, and then we're gonna start building the actual drink. Any questions? Good? Good. So you do need a shaker. If you don't have a shaker, you can use something else, maybe like a water bottle. In a pinch, you can just stir it or just pour everything in the glass with ice and stir it. It will work. It's not the best, but it will work. There's two kinds of shaker tins for the most part. You have the tin on tins, as we call them, oftentimes used with a pint glass as such. But I feel like most people at home will have what you call the cobbler shaker or a three-piece. The really classic style, and these are great. I love these for home use because you don't have to have a strainer for them because you already have a strainer in here. They're really, really convenient to use at home. And if you're just making one drink, they're great. Also, they look so much better than this tower does, right? So we're gonna start with your tequila. So what you have in yours, you already have 1.5 ounces. So you don't have to measure it out. I'm gonna measure out my 1.5. So I'm on the same page with you. Wow, in it goes. And now the next step, I usually do the triple sec. And here's where it gets a little bit tricky, and everyone's a little bit different. Like I said, this margarita is going to be fairly tart because it is a very classic style. So I would say you want to do 0.75 ounces to 1 ounce. So if you like a little bit sweeter, go for the whole 1 ounce of triple sec. You'll appreciate it. So you want to have, for this, you want to have a jigger, or if you don't have a jigger, I would say just pour half of what you have in your container in there, and that should do the trick for you. And then the last step is the lime juice. And like I said, this lime juice it's squeezed yesterday. So it's already going to have a little bit more bitterness to it. And this is a great way to for you to see where your sweet and sour balance lies. I like mine nice and tart, so I'm going to go for a full 3/4 ounces, so 0.75 ounces. But if you don't like liminess that much, you can definitely go a little bit lighter. If you're like, I want all the sour, you can go a little bit heavier. So it's like the first one might not be exactly what you like, but that's the experiment. So you might make one and you realize, okay, I want to dial up on the lime or dial back on the lime. So that's just perfectly normal. So make it the way you we make it all together. And then if you want to switch it up in the future, at least now you know exactly what your preference is. All right, and I'm gonna shake this bad boy unless we have any questions. Okay, I'm also gonna put some ice in the glass beforehand, because we're gonna serve it over rocks. Wow. And here we go. Nice hard shake always. Shaking is supposed to burn calories. If it's not, then you're doing it wrong. That's what I say about that. All right. Now you can pour it over the rocks here in our glass. If you want to garnish it with something, you can use one of those lime wedges we just made. They will work really, really well in here. It's very, very simple and easy garnish. Put it aside. I actually like to cut them under the diagonal a little bit so they almost look like this. So if you do 2 of them, it looks pretty like this. Or a couple of other ways if you want to impress someone or whatever not. We take one of these limes, just away from here, and I cut these circles, and I fold the circle in half, and then I cut it from the middle like this. Then I can place this right here. So you can't really squeeze it, but it looks very classy. It's quite a bit different looking, and it doesn't get in the drink, so it's not going to be on your way ever. Just one little way of using up the lime and making a full garnish. All right, does anybody have any questions, feedback? Does some of you make a drink? I'm going to enjoy this while I wait for your questions and feedback. Delicious. Tart, refreshing, a little bit salty. That's what it should taste like. Delicious. Okay, everybody seems to be doing good. I hope you had a drink in hand at this point.
Now, so far we haven't used the little container with the G on the top, right?
Oh, we have not. We're gonna get to
That's coming up. And did we use the one with the M? No, that's coming up. Good. I just want to be sure I'm on the right page.
On the right page, we use the first three ingredients, which is just lime, tequila, and the orange liqueur. Like I said, very simple affair. All right, well, we're gonna move on to mezcal. So we're gonna make a drink called the Oaxacan Velvet. Oaxaca is the southernmost state in Mexico and is known for producing mezcal. Mezcal is, it belongs in the, let's put it this way. Tequila belongs to the family of mezcal. So mezcal is an overarching term, like you would say whiskey. And under whiskey, you would have bourbon, you have Scotch, you have Irish whiskey, you have Japanese whiskey, so forth, so forth, so forth. Mezcal refers to the fact that it is made from an agave plant. And when you are talking about making tequila and agaves, there's a lot of different agave varietals. As you remember earlier, I said tequila can be only made from one particular plant. With mezcal, all bets are off, basically. So there's a much bigger variant in flavors in mezcal than it is in tequila, because all the plants are different and some of them are widely harvested. So it's really like night and day what they will taste like. With tequila, of course, there's differences, but it's the same as saying there's a difference in bourbon. Yes, bourbon is bourbon, like they will taste different, but it's still always bourbon. With mezcal, it's wildly different. One of the key characteristics that people know of mezcal is there's smokiness to it, which is true to some of them, but not to all of them. And B, the whole worm thing, right? There's a worm at the bottom of the bottle, which is just, that's
no worms.
and it's not a worm, it's just, I believe it is I think they put a little a maggot in there from like a lot.
Not like that.
This is a complete gimmick, and 99.9% of them do not do this. So when you go to the store, there's one particular brand that has it floating at the bottom, and it's just a selling tactic. It really doesn't have anything to do with the production of mezcal. So I just want to put that out there. So it's not a thing, and if it's not your cup of tea, you don't really have to worry about it. So the mezcal that I have for you today is called Vecinos. It's Los Vecinos, and this is a cooperative of different distillers in Mexico that put together this product. And this one does not have a lot of smokiness to it. And like I said, some people really like the smokiness. I like it too, and it works really well in some cocktails. But for sipping, I like it to be something smoother. And mezcal is one of those things that's really become popular in the past, let's say 6 or 7 years in the U.S. soil. So now there's a lot of it that's out there, and they can really go very high in price very, very quickly because of how artisanal it is. Because oftentimes they will, for some of the cooler stuff, like to get a very unique type of agave plant, they have to like hike into the desert, manually harvest it and then log this 80 to 120 pound piña, which is this huge thing. Because they're agave plants, they grow under the ground. They have to dig them out, and they're huge. They were anywhere between 30 to 130 pounds, basically. Like, they're huge. So when you have these people going out there in the wilderness and harvesting them and bringing them back, it's extremely labor intensive, and the yield is very little. So if you ever go to the store and see a mezcal that costs $100 a bottle, it's not rare, but it's rare in a sense that they probably have made only 1,000 bottles in the world. So you kind of pay for that. But for Vecinos, once again, this is one of my bang for buck go-tos. I'm going to put a little bit closer so you can see it, plus Vecinos. I think it probably runs like $30 something in the stores, give or take. Beautifully balanced. You can totally sip on this over rocks or just using the drinks as well. And mezcal definitely is quite a bit more powerful in scents as well. So there is a lot more flavor than usually than you have in tequila. So we're gonna move to making. Do you have any questions about mezcal or tequila? Does this make sense? I know I know so much about it, so for me, it's just like I just spew this information out and it all makes sense to me in my head. But if things are unclear, so please ask me. I'll be happy to clarify or add or something.
In our kit, we had this little container, and is that all of that go into the glass, or should we use just a portion of it?
Yeah, I mean, you're always welcome to taste it. I encourage people to always taste what you make drinks out of as well. You know, just like take a little sip and just see how you feel about it. You know, and take 2 sips. That's a good thing about tasting. Never do 1 sip, especially if it's your first taste of the day. Golden rule: always at least 2 or 3 sips, because the first sip is always, especially when you talk about alcohol, even wine, the first sip is your palate is just getting used to it. You can't have an accurate read. So the first sip is like just second, third sip, you can actually really, like, because your palate is now used to the alcohol, and it's like now you can actually focus on the flavors that you're going to be tasting. Yeah, we're going to have a little sip, but yeah, the whole thing goes in there. And then we're going to take that little container with the G on it, which is ginger infused agave syrup, which I made 2 days ago. And it's very, very simple. And it's also a very cost-effective way to make something really, really delicious. We use agave syrup, and I cut it with water. So it's 2 parts agave syrup, 1 part water. And that's just because, especially like a good grade agave nectar or syrup, will be so thick that if I put it in a shaker tin, it doesn't actually dissolve, and it just kind of gets stuck to the sides of it. So, but once you dilute it with a little bit of water, it just dissolves perfectly. And I do about 2 parts of that syrup that I made with the water to like 1 part of like julienne ginger. So I just take ginger, I peel it, and I just go chop it thinly, and I'll just leave it in there for like 24 to 48 hours. And it's perfect. So if you want to pop that open, you smell it. It kind of smells like candied ginger, doesn't it? Just absolutely delicious. And this is a great ingredient for all tequila drinks. You can make a margarita with this anytime. So like I said, it's very cost effective and very easy to make, and it just adds a really fun twist to it. And then we have the last ingredient, which is, sorry, not the last one, which is the lime juice again. And then you have their little container that says RW, which looks like red wine, and it is red wine. And that's going to be the float on top. And that's what makes this drink really unique and just very, very different. This is one of my bartenders that came up with this. And it's kind of an homage to a classical drink called the New York Sour. And the New York Sour is sometimes made with egg white, sometimes not. But it's a whiskey sour, and you do a red wine float on top of it. So just a very, very classic, simple drink. And we just kind of took it to Oaxaca, essentially using mezcal and making a margarita variation with a little float on top. So it looks really cool. And the flavor profile is just like, wow. You'll see. All right, I'm gonna jump right into making this. So if you have any questions, shoot. And Catherine did let me know that she will be recording this. And so if you want to ever revisit this, you will have it available as well. So you have the whole class and you have all the information. So even if you don't get a chance to take all the notes, you'll be able to review it. And you should always have I think you all have my email too. So if you ever have any questions, I'm always like, yep, please email and ask. Okay, we're going to start with the mezcal. So for this drink, we're not going to do a salt rim. Once again, if you want to, you're welcome to, or a sugar rim, or whatever you want to do. Like, it's your drink. Like, have fun with it. We're going to do, so this is, the agave syrup is a little bit sweeter than the triple sec is. So I do 1/2 ounce in mine. But like I said, if you like it sweeter, you can go a little bit heavier. So I do about 1/2 ounce. And then I'll finish up with, once again, mine, I usually love the 3/4 ounce. So I'm going to 3/4 ounces of fresh lime juice. And we're going to serve this one on the rocks as well. I got big rocks for myself, just to kind of, it just accentuates a little bit of that layering of the cocktail. They come in this very handy silicone packet. I don't need to get them everywhere online. They're like $10, and they're great for making big ice cubes. I like to filter my water as well before, and then put it in the freezer, and yeah, it's just beautiful. It melts a little bit slower, so your drinks don't become as watery, which is one of the big perks. Okay, shake it time. I'm just gonna pour this over my big ice cube, your few ice cubes, or whatever you have there. Where's my red wine? Oh, it's right here. I come prepared. All right, and now it's in the glass. So you can just slowly pour it over. You can use the help of a spoon a little bit. As long as you don't dump it, it will float. And that's just, it's very simple. It's just physics and the density of the liquids. Because we have sugar in here, well, the agave syrup, it's going to be more dense than the wine is, so it will just float right on top. And you can pour, I would say, most of that container in there, or maybe half of it, 3/4. If you want to do more, you can always do more. Yeah, I usually do about 3/4. And there it is. This is the Oaxacan velvet. So it looks beautiful. You have a nice little layer on top. It's going to be refreshing. And this is going to have a very, very flavor profile. You get a little bit of that hint of mezcal and smoke, and like a little bit of that wininess on the top. And this drink will change as well, because when the first sips are going to have a bit more of the wine, and the finish is going to have a little bit less of it. And that also makes drinks a bit more fun, because it's just almost like not one drink, but you kind of get two for the price of one, because it changes. So yeah, if you made one, enjoy it, and come at me with questions. I'm all ears.
Do you feel fresh lime juice freezes okay?
Yeah, it's still not going to be ideal, but yeah, if you make some, what I would try to do to minimize oxidation always is I'll try to put it in a container and to seal it as fast as I can. The best thing is usually just a bottle, because you can, even if a smaller bottle, because once you fill it up all the way here, there's so little oxygen in here, because oxygen is the enemy of all the fresh things, right? Unfortunately, we need it, but that's how it is. But yeah, you can even put it in like a deli container and just freeze it and then unfreeze it. Very fun. So your first sips are definitely going to be quite a bit more winey, and then you start getting more of that mezcal mix with the lime juice.
I have a question. What do you like? What are some mezcals that you recommend? I feel like sometimes I've bought a few, just at the store before, and they've not been great.
Do you remember what you bought?
I can't remember. I'll have to look. I might email you. But I do. I actually traveled to Oaxaca, so I was able to visit a few distilleries. So I do really like mezcal, but I haven't found anything really great in the stores here.
Yeah, I mean, I have also visited Oaxaca, and it's just a beautiful place with so many different cultures. I really, really loved it. It's one of my favorite places that I've ever visited.
Me too. Top 5 for sure.
Yeah, it's just that's absolutely fabulous. So I would say this, the Los Vecinos that I just put out here. This,
Okay.
do you like it smoky or not?
I do like it smoky.
Okay, a couple of brands that are readily available here that pop into my head are, one is Banhez. It's spelled Banhez, as in Zorro.
Okay.
Pretty readily available. It comes in a bigger bottle, and it has the agave plants, the flower in the front. And the other one is Del Maguey. Let's see. Yeah, so Del Maguey line, they're the green bottles. I don't have one right here right now. They're Vida. So Del Maguey is a line that has about 50 different mezcales from different villages. But usually what you see in the stores is one called Vida, Vida. And that's a big smoke bomb. Sometimes even too big. But it's great for cocktails.
Okay, great.
Otherwise, this brand is a little bit newer and has beautiful bottles. It's called Bozal. Not smoky, but bang for buck. I like this a lot. And I mean, the Del Maguey's are really fun as well, but it's just a lot of them run very expensive very quick.
Yeah.
This
Awesome. That's great.
is Toll, which is similar to Mezcal, and this is about $100 a bottle, but it's one of the most delicious things I've ever tasted in my life.
Okay.
It's so good. That's the bad thing about Mezcal. The good stuff gets really expensive really fast here. So it's like whenever you can go back, just smuggle as much across as you can,
Where'd you go?
No, for sure. I took some back, but not enough.
It's never enough. All right, anybody else? Do you have any questions before we jump into our last drink? That sounds like a no. Okay, so the last drink, I kind of left this an open concept. I really love to bring in some of that creative, workshop-y experience into all of my classes or workshops. And so what you have left, you have one tequila left, you have enough lime left, and you have whatever else you have left. You have some of the ginger agave, you have some of the orange liqueur. So it's kind of a dealer's choice at the finish line here right now. So what I want you to do is make a margarita the way you want to make it. So if you have anything in the kitchen, so I just went to, I actually didn't prepare for this because I was like, I'm going to play along as I was at home and I have nothing. So I went to the fridge in the back and I found cilantro, and I love herbaceousness. So I'm going to do a couple of leaves of cilantro. I'm going to make a basic margarita. I'm going to use this ginger agave instead of the triple sec or orange liqueur. And I'm going to do a little bit of cilantro in there. And then I think that's pretty good, because I get the ginger, I get the agave flavor, I get the tequila flavor, and I'm going to salt rim it. So once again, a really simple concept. So if you have any kind of berries, maybe you have some raspberry jam in the fridge, that will work. So instead of the triple sec, you can do raspberry jam in there and just shake it a little bit longer, and it will be quite a bit more fruity. And you can call it a raspberry margarita. Why not? There's no rules, really. Going back to my original comment of being margarita has 3 things. It does, but also the fun of playing with flavors is changing things up. But you always want to start with the classics and understand how they work before you. Well, this is what I tell all my young bartenders is you have to learn to walk before you learn to run. So if you're just coming up to be a bartender and you're bringing me a 7-ingredient drink, I'm going to be like, no, you're bringing me a 3-ingredient drink and we'll talk. Because if you can balance 3 ingredients, if you can't balance 3 ingredients, I don't want you to touch 7 ingredients. If you can balance 3, we can start talking. So I'm going to keep it very simple. Ginger agave, a little cilantro. I might do some bitters in there. Why not? So I'm going to do that. So does anybody have any questions? I don't know how many of you are playing along right now. How many are in your kitchen in the fridge right now? But if you have any questions, this is a great time to ask. about ingredients or flavor profiles or whatever not.
I ran out of tequila.
Oh, you lush. Sorry that I disappointed you. I'll put an extra one for you next time for sure. Okay, little ginger agave here for me. A little bit of that lime juice. And I'm gonna do just a few leaves of cilantro because it's pretty powerful. And you can go either way with any kind of drinks. I mean, like I said, I really enjoy, I enjoy fruity flavors, like a passion fruit margarita sounds delicious, like all day, every day. But I really appreciate also when you do a really good job of kind of bring it more to a savory side, and like something like cilantro or herbs does a really good job at that. So instead of going like fruity and sweet, which your brain is like, okay, this is sweet, adding something like that, well, it kind of counterbalances all the sweetness, and you're just like, you're almost like drinking something completely different. And I that's one of my favorite things to do, is just like use herbs and make them a little bit more savory and just a little bit more unexpected. Okay, and let's see here. I have ginger in here. I have cilantro. I think I'm gonna do, I've got some hopped grapefruit bitters, because that will work. The grapefruit works with both, and the hoppiness will work with the cilantro. And here we go. Sugar time. And I'm just going to repurpose this glass. One sip. Because it already has a salt rim, and I'm not going to drink 3 drinks in a row. Pour all this over here.
I just see you pour perfectly good alcohol down the drain.
It was a little bit diluted at this point. Don't judge me. And
You wish you had that.
I know. See,
I ran out, you know.
one of these days we can do it in person, and then we can all have drinks together. It'll be wonderful.
That would be fun.
And
Oh, I can't wait.
a little bit of lime and a little bit of cilantro, and there you go. There's a completely different take on what we already did. We got the salt rim. We got a little cilantro on the side. It looks a little sad, but it's okay. It has flavor.
So last summer I played and I made a jalapeno infused tequila. That was kind of fun to. How long can you leave things like that in it? Do you know?
So if you're using just straight up tequila, I mean, fairly indefinitely, because the percentage of alcohol in there.
It preserves it, right?
Yep, you're fairly safe, especially if you put it in the fridge.
I did, yeah.
At all. The one difference that I would bring out here is the flavor will change quite a bit over time. So even if I always say whenever you infuse something, especially when you're using alcohol or really anything, just try it as often as you can. So I think the best example I can bring is using cucumber. So putting cucumber in vodka or water or like anything, it's delicious. Like I said, that beautiful fresh cucumber taste. But just after a day or two, it starts to taste a little bit more like pickled cucumber. And same thing will happen with everything else. So you can do it both ways, because if you just take jalapenos and you just slice them up and put them in vodka or tequila, I think in 24 hours, you'll pull out enough flavor that you can just dump it. And then just have this like fresh taste in there.
Okay, thanks.
The longer you leave it in there, the different it will get. So yeah, you got to play around and see what you like.